Great, great. Thanks, Jean. Sure. I always love to follow Jean because she sets me up so beautifully in so many ways. It's really great. So it's such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all about the work that I've been doing, and then also to get to engage in the conversation with you later. This is very exciting for me, so it's a real pleasure to be here. And I'm here in many ways because of mentors, and women mentors, actually. So I went back to graduate school after getting my MSW because of a woman. I was actually a clinical social worker in Austin, Texas, and there was a lot of work being done about girls and women in psychotherapy when I was in graduate school and coming out of graduate school. And we were finding we had to travel to go get that stuff. We had to come up here to Boston, we had to go, lots of other places. Those people weren't in Texas and they weren't coming to Texas. So we formed a little group of our own, and we started inviting people to come to Texas and give talks in Austin, so that we wouldn't have to travel so much and we could sort of get our colleagues in on this new interesting information. And as a result of that, we had Carol Gilligan come to Austin, and as she was getting on the plane to head back to Boston, she said, "Renee, you should come study with me." And I said, "I don't think so. I'm done. I'm not going back to school. This isn't happening." But that stuck with me, as you might imagine. That stayed with me. That I can still see standing at the gate at the airport and her turning and saying that to me, and somebody sort of taking that time and saying, "You can do this. Why don't you go back to school? I think you've got an eye for this. I think you could do this kind of work. Why don't you come join me?" Basically made a real difference. And then once I was in graduate school and working and trying to figure out what to do, I knew I wanted to look at relationships. I wasn't sure what kind. Jean Rhodes comes along and says, "Renee, you want to study relationships? You should look at youth mentoring. Come on." And she was on my dissertation committee and just made all that, really set the stage for my career. So these really important people, and I will say that for me it was important that there were women. And the women, I've had male mentors, they've also played a critical role in my development, but there's something about the women that have come along that have been just especially important in my development. So I'm here in many parts because of that, and I'm thrilled to be able to talk about women and mentoring and girls and all this good stuff. So the work that we're talking with you about is a qualitative study of big sister, little sister relationships through the Big Sister Association. They were gracious enough to let me work through their agency and do this research. I have a wonderful collaborative relationship with them. I'm very grateful for that. It's interesting, the title of this paper, "She Gives Me a Break from the World," focuses on one aspect of these relationships, which is these girls are living in very stressed conditions for a number of reasons. Low income, lots of strikes against them, low resourced in a number of ways. And these mentoring relationships, for many of the girls talked about sort of providing some relief from that. But at the same time, and you'll see kind of throughout how they talk about these relationships, there's also a way in which I could have called this, although it wouldn't have been a quote from a girl, because this is something a girl in the study actually said, but if you would imagine a girl saying, she could say, "She helps me engage with the world." And I was thinking about what Deborah said in her opening comments about challenging girls to do what they're doing even better, even more, to really stretch. And that's something that these girls are talking about when they talk about their relationships with their mentors. It's the ways in which they got pushed and stretched and are then engaging with the world in different ways than they would have before. And I think that's playing out in what Jean's showing in her research about how those relationships really shift and change, and they're engaging with these other people in their world in different ways, partly as a consequence of these really important mentoring relationships. So as Jean was saying, well, let me just say, so I got to this for my dissertation, I did this study of successful mentoring relationships, male and female, and the Big Sister Association also came to me and said, "What about gender? What about gender? Surely there must be something about gender going on." I was like, what a great question. So again, see how they're pushing and driving folks, which is terrific, just as Jean was saying. So then it did get me to take up this question, what's the role of gender in the mentoring relationship? And as Jean was saying before, there hasn't been that much look at it. Really, when we go and do our searches, is anybody else talking about this? We're not finding much except each other, I think, and a few other sort of stray things here and there. But there's a tremendous interest in programs, right? But there are a few empirical studies about gender and mentoring. There's been this speculation that it works differently, and that's part of what Jean's been talking about. Now, what I was picking up on is the sense of the girls' expectations, that the relational styles, different set of expectations, so that might influence the process, and the girls are going to benefit more from emotional intimacy. Now, how that got because there wasn't a lot of study of this, it was sort of turning into a caricature in the literature in a way, from what I could hear, which is sort of like girls do relationships and boys do activities. And that wasn't what I had heard in this study, that it included both boys and girls. There wasn't this sort of neat divide like that, as if boys' relationships were all about the activities and girls' relationships were all about the relationships. So that's part of what I was going after in this study, was kind of responding, again, in the absence of much study, this kind of talk that was going on around girls and boys, and drawing from other literature that said, yes, girls do focus more on relationships, they expect more from their intimate relationships, they expect greater intimacy in there. But you know, how does that really, how does that really play out in mentoring? And so that's the gender and interpersonal relationships, that girls do tend to disclose personal feelings, they value mutual support, all that good stuff. So then I took the pairs, just the female pairs from that study of these successful relationships. So this is the one end, this is the sort of dream mentoring relationships. The one when I went to Big Sister Association and said, when you go to work every day and you think about those relationships that make you glad you do what you do, can you connect me with those people? So we're thinking we can learn something from ones that are going really well. So I interviewed the big sister, the little sister, and then interviewed them as a pair. And then really took up these questions: what's the nature of these enduring ties? Because these were all at least a year or more, and many of them much more than that. And then what links, if any, do the participants make between the different dimensions of the relationship and the girl's development? So this is really a way of saying, let's look at these relationships from the perspectives of the participants themselves. What do they have to say about their experiences? What can they teach us about them?